Death has the kind of win record that would get a sports team disbanded for ruining morale. Humanity keeps showing up anyway. Like we're convinced today's the day will surprise the concept of entropy. The running tally is rough. Death, about 108 billion. Humans, still zero. Unless you count the one billionaire who froze his head like a yogurt cup he plans to finish later. We approach death the way toddlers approach gravity. Loud, determined, repeatedly face-planting. And every few centuries, someone announces they've figured it out. They haven't. But the confidence is impressive. Our attempts live on a spectrum. On one end, you have the sweet, maybe if I eat this root, I'll be fine optimism. On the other end, you have, this will absolutely explode. Usually said by someone holding metal tongs they really shouldn't trust. Still, the creativity is kind of beautiful. A long, unbroken tradition of humans refusing to accept the terms and conditions of existence. And it all started with people wandering around the ancient world, picking leaves, and hoping one of them was the anti-death one. Number 1. Ancient hacks. Herbs, prayers, and hope-based medicine. Someone in ancient Egypt once looked at honey, wine, and crocodile dung and thought, yes, this is definitely the mixture that will keep my organs inside my body. That level of optimism should be studied. Not medically, just emotionally. Early civilizations really gave it everything they had, which mostly meant plants they found on the ground and chants that sounded confident. If a fever hit, people gathered around with the seriousness of a board meeting, then applied something that belonged nowhere near a human. The surprising part is how normal that felt to them. Greek philosophers took a different angle. They decided the soul was immortal, which is a comforting thought if you're the one doing the deciding, and a baffling one if you're currently being eaten by a lion. It's the philosophical equivalent of yelling, "You can't fire me, I quit," at nature. Then you get alchemists, who tried to cook immortality in a pot like they were prepping a stew their landlord definitely shouldn't smell. They wrote entire recipes for eternal life, none of which mention not getting burned in the explosion. Eventually people noticed their leaf-based attempts weren't working, so they tried something bolder. Structure. You know things are rough when organization itself starts to feel like medicine. Number 2. Medieval loopholes. Outsmarting death with paperwork. Some people fought death with swords. Others tried receipts. Medieval Europe went all in on the paperwork strategy, convinced that if they collected enough spiritual documents, death would get confused and move to the next person in line. Indulgences were basically DLC for your afterlife. You paid a fee, and in return, the church promised fewer loading screens between you and heaven. It was the first time religion functioned like microtransactions, minus the part where anyone felt good about it. Then came relics, which were marketed like anti-death accessories. You'd hear things like, "This bone fragment is lightly used, belonged to a saint, may contain trace holiness." Imagine Amazon reviews. 4 stars, didn't save my cousin, but delivery was fast. Doctors weren't doing much better. Their main prescription was bloodletting, which was medicine in the same way unplugging your router is tech support. It doesn't make sense, but everyone nods and pretends it helps. If you were sick, they removed the thing keeping you alive and waited to see if that fixed it. People eventually realized that rituals and paperwork weren't beating death, so they turned to something new. Experiments built by people who trusted fire and metal way more than physics ever encouraged. Number 3. Early science. Progress and the occasional explosion. Someone in the 18th century woke up, looked at a corpse, and thought, I wonder what happens if I electrocute it. That's the moment science really committed to the bit. I once shocked myself on a doorknob and needed to sit down for 10 minutes, so I respect their confidence. Or whatever the opposite of self-preservation is. Vaccinations showed up and immediately became the first anti-death strategy that actually worked, which confused everyone. Some people were convinced a cow would sprout DK them. A full cow. Meanwhile, smallpox just quietly stopped ruining lives. Surgery started leveling up too. Before this point, it was mostly fast knife activities performed by someone with the energy of a man who claims he's pretty good at whittling. Once anesthesia existed, surgeons got bolder, which improved survival rates but also produced stories that read like slapstick horror. Still, every improvement nudged the scoreboard, even if slightly. And once humans smelled the possibility of living longer than their dental record suggested, things got ambitious. Ambitious enough that the explosions became less frequent, and the victories a little more real. Number 4. Modern medicine. Humanity actually levels up. Antibiotics are the closest thing humans have to a cheat code. One day an infection meant drafting your will. The next, it meant a doctor handing you pills and telling you to stop licking doorknobs. That shift gave death a moment of mild irritation, like it had to update its strategy guide. Organ transplants arrived soon after, turning surgeons into the most confident IT technicians on Earth. They swap out organs with the calm of someone replacing a laptop battery, except the laptop is screaming and full of blood. The miracle is how often it works. If I tried to assemble anything that complicated, even a bookshelf, I'd end up with spare parts and a personal crisis. Then there's CPR, which is socially approved chest assault. It looks chaotic, feels chaotic, and yet somehow restarts people. Every mall has a sign-up sheet for classes, right between pretzels and discount sneakers, as if reviving someone is a casual weekend hobby. For the first time in history, humans weren't losing instantly. We were losing slightly slower. And once people tasted that tiny victory, a certain type of person decided slowing down death wasn't enough. They wanted a full refund, preferably with futuristic branding. Number 5. Tech Utopians, the future. Sponsored by people who fear aging more than climate. A billionaire somewhere is currently paying another billionaire to spin his blood like a smoothie, just to see if that helps. That's the era we're in. Death isn't the enemy anymore. It's more like a performance target for people with unlimited budgets and a strong dislike of birthdays. Life extension startups now offer young blood transfusions, which feels less like medicine and more like vampire fan fiction written by a venture capitalist. Everyone involved speaks in a calm, professional tone, as if the rest of us aren't noticing that they've reinvented the concept of borrowing youth from a fairy tale. Then you've got biohackers injecting experimental gene therapy, updating their bodies the way people update phone software. They never read the terms. They just assume the human operating system can handle whatever liquid bravery they've ordered from a website with a suspicious amount of neon. And of course, cryonics. Pay a huge fee, climb into a metal tube, and hope future scientists thaw you out like leftovers. It's essentially long-term parking for your body. You're paying rent on your own head. All of it circles back to the same idea. If death won't budge, maybe you can finesse it with gadgets and a monthly subscription plan. But regular people tried something else entirely. They tried vibes. Number 6. The immortality lifestyle. Denying mortality through sheer vibes. Some people fight death with science. Others fight it by spending $12 on a supplement named something like Elderly Vitalis Core. The label always has a mountain on it, which feels optimistic for a pill made in a warehouse next to a parking lot. Wellness culture treats longevity like a side quest you can complete, using powders that taste like damp chalk. There's this belief that if you blend enough roots together, your cells will get confused and decide to stick around. My friend once made me try a drink that looked like pond water and claimed it supported youthful energy. I felt nothing except regret. Then there's extreme fitness. The idea that if you outrun death on a treadmill, it can't legally catch you. People talk about kale like it's body armor. Whole communities wake up at 4 a.m. to lift weights shaped like kettles, convinced they've discovered the secret to immortality, when mostly they've discovered aching joints. And longevity influencers, the 6 almond crowd, they whisper the word protocol like they're revealing national secrets, when the actual result is an 800% increase in smugness. But all of this points in one direction: effort. Humans just want to feel like they're trying, even if the math is imaginary. Continue. Number 7. Humanity still loses, but points for creativity. Death's score is still sitting at 108 billion, and humanity's counter hasn't moved. But we've unlocked an impressive number of side quests trying. Herbal experiments, paperwork, electricity mishaps. At this point, the scoreboard looks less like a competition and more like the notes section of a long, confused group project. Looking back, it's basically a list of DIY attempts gone wrong. Every generation said, "We've got this," then immediately demonstrated they did not, in fact, got this. But the commitment is admirable. There's something endearing about an entire species refusing to accept that the warranty on the human body is non-negotiable. I tried a longevity hack once. Drank a gallon of water, took a walk, stretched my back, thought I'd cracked the code. Turned out I was just dehydrated. A lot of human history works like that. We never beat death. We just keep inventing new hobbies around pretending we might. And honestly, that's probably enough to keep the rivalry going for another few billion tries.